Willie, what's up, man? So great to see you. Thanks for joining me on the podcast today.
What's up? How are you?
I'm pretty good. I had your dad on. I was looking, gosh, it's probably been 2 or 3 years now. And obviously, I, along with a lot of people, have been following your guys' journey. But you guys have a new project coming out, which is the movie The Blind. I'm really curious about why coming out with that movie now, and tell me a little bit about the premise of the movie.
Yeah, it's well, we got into production because we really just want to make some more positive things. We saw from Duck Dynasty that there was a real need and want and desire for more positive TV and positive movies and um, entertainment in general. And so, we were thinking like other people's stories and people like we were before, Duck Dynasty, and then we came with this idea about Phil and Kay's story, which was kind of on the nose. We were like, well, shoot, that's about our own family, but it's such an incredible story. We just felt like we had to tell it, and so we sat down with mom and dad and said, "Hey, we've got kind of wanted to tell your guys' story at the beginning before it all kind of got better." And they were really for it. I mean, they've been real transparent about their lives, and Phil. He always wants to share the gospel with people, so he just was like, if this is a way to get the message out there, he was willing to do that. And in Christianity and I guess life in general, we always say, your past in the past, and we look forward and we move on and press forward, until they make a movie about it. And then it kind of, you live there, in that space. And it was tough for him to watch, and just to go back and dig up all that stuff, and for he and mom. But it's a story they want to tell, and I think they're proud of it. And yeah, it's raw, it's real. It's not a cheesy Christian movie. It was hard
Yeah.
making it a Christian movie because most of it was not. So it was hard keeping it from being rated R. But we did it, and yeah, we're proud of it.
I think the thing I like most about the movie, because I got sent a screener, is that you're right. It's dark and it's raw, and it tells a real story as opposed to the family that, millions and millions of people know, which is where Phil is now. And when he was on the podcast, he was literally reading scripture on the podcast when I had him on, the episode did really well, the conversation. But yeah, it shows a darker side. I was curious about where, I mean, I know you guys have been in the public limelight quite often and for a long time. I'm curious if there's any sort of embarrassment or shame in that from either your folks or from you, and how you manage that.
Embarrassment, yes. I mean, Phil's actually used those exact words. He's just embarrassed about kind of how he lived and how he carried on. And I think seeing it played out, you realize how he could have lost everything. He was, I mean, it was right there to lose, us as kids and his wife, and that probably should have happened. I guess if I was giving advice to my mom now, I'd probably say you may need to move on down the road. I don't think
Yeah.
he's the one. And so he realized how close he took it, to that level. And had it not been at the time for his sister, Aunt Jan, who never gave up on Phil. And I think even in that time when Phil couldn't, I'm sure mom couldn't really minister to Phil or try to help him in any way. She was hurt and damaged too. And, but his sister just kept, man, she had this weird view of Phil, or it was like, she went and begged this preacher to go up there and share the gospel with him, and in a very adversarial manner. Like he got in his car, drove to a bar, and went in and shared his faith with Phil at the bar. Phil was not happy about it, and but my Aunt Jan told the preacher, she said, if you convert him, he'll convert thousands. Now, how she knew that or how she could see that was just amazing to me. Because you're talking about, Phil was a gifted athlete. He's a smart guy. He got his master's degree at Louisiana Tech, and it was like he had all this hope, and come out of this. And we showed that in the movie too, kind of where they came out of, super poverty, and my grandmother had mental illness, and so they kind of worked his way out of that, and all this future was looking bright, and here this guy is, and then he just blew it. He just wasted it all, and threw it all away, got fired from his job, and he ends up, leasing this bar, and it was kind of just like wasted talent, And so he took it that far, and were it not for that preacher going up and planting that seed, he didn't respond immediately. He was not happy, and it wasn't until
I'm
he
sure he
just
responded, just not favorably, right?
no, he just kind, it just it's like you plant that seed and you just never know, and so at least it gave him an option. And it wasn't until in the movie there's a line that says when he got to the end of himself, that's when the beginning of God happened, and so he just kind of ran it, like we do. We just run it all the way into the ground, and he finds himself, extremely lonely by himself. He's being chased by the police. He's living in the woods like a crazy person, and then he has this moment where he's like, okay, maybe I'll check that story out that guy said about Jesus Christ, and then he went from that just to like, oh, I'm like insanely on fire, and that's what I remember. Most of my memories are from him just preaching all the time. Like you said, he was reading his Bible. He still does that. Every time I go
Yeah.
down to his house, he gets his Bible out. He's quoting something or reading something. In fact, most of our conversations, believe it or not, it's not even about hunting as much or outdoors or football or politics or whatever. It's still about the Bible. It's still about stories that something he's reading or something I'm reading or somewhere I spoke or he spoke. And so it's just been that way for me for 50 years. I mean, it's been very consistent. He's just been the same,
So
same
how
kind of
old were
dude.
you? How old were you when this conversion happened and there started to be a transition in his life and the direction he was going?
Yeah, I was around 2, and so in the movie,
Okay.
I'm portrayed actually by my grandson, John Shepard, John Luke's son, which
Oh,
is
I
kind
didn't
of
know that.
cool. Yeah, he
That's
plays
cool.
me in the movie, which is
Yeah, that's really cool.
yeah, we need a 2-year-old, and so he was the right age and had the right look, I guess.
Yeah,
But
makes
yeah, that's
sense.
about how old I was. So really, my earliest memories are when they just kind of when they got back together. When we moved to West Monroe, Louisiana, which is where we still are. Um, in the apartment that the church had kind of set up for mom, because she was a single mom at this point when she shows up. The pastor that had led her to the Lord had set it up, had gotten her a job, and the job, ironically enough, I mean, we live in a small town, but it ain't that small, was actually from my wife Corey's grandfather and dad are the ones who hired my mother to be an office worker at their company. They
Okay.
were in the retail business. And so, yeah, small world that we ended up getting married because we ended up at that church. And that's when Phil came back. And so those are my earliest memories. And that's when Phil he went all in with the gospel for sure. But that's also when he told me one time, he said, when I finally got my head clear, I could think about business. And that's when he went all in on the duck call. And
Hmm.
man, he would tell stories about this duck call. Like, this duck call, we're gonna sell $1 million worth of these things. We're all sitting around going, $1 million, like we're making like 12 grand a year. Like, how in the world? So mostly we were fishing, we were commercial fishing, and but he just had this dream. He said, I think this duck call, and there's a little of that on the movie where you see kind of these ideas formed for the duck call and what he could do with that. And that's when we ended up moving down there on the river. And he said, I'm going to fish the river and make this duck call. And, one of these days we're going to be super successful. And, we're going to all have new cars. I remember that was the big thing. Like,
To have a
okay,
new car. You got a little more
whatever
than that,
that,
I imagine,
new
right
truck. We're
now.
gonna all have a new truck, and so that was our goal in life. So, and I guess at some point we did get a new truck.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. The thing I like about the movie is the underlying theme is redemption. And all the guys
Yep.
listening to this podcast and listening to the show, like they're well aware of their baggage and their bullshit, and they're well aware of all their failures and shortcomings. And I think a lot of these guys have a hard time, and myself included in many ways, with this idea of redemption, recovery, redemption, improving yourself, fixing things, making amends. So I think that's probably what I like most about the movie, is that you can come from the depths of despair and actually make something of your life.
Yeah, I mean, you can see. Well, what's cool is you can see the success now, 50 years later. You can see the success through uh, not just Duck Dynasty. And by the way, had they not stayed together, had Phil just went his own way, mom ended up moving on, my whole life would have completely, literally changed. In fact, I wouldn't be talking to you today. You wouldn't have talked to
Right.
Phil. None of that would have happened. the way it laid out. And so really every day is a marker. It's like every day it's like this wouldn't have happened if that couple in South Arkansas. So you want to talk about redemption, like man, when you can't see it, and I think a lot of guys will get to that point where they just can't see past tomorrow. They think, man, it's it's too far gone or it's too damaged, and you can. So now you can see the fruit of that. You can see it through, he ended up doing what he always wanted to do, which was hunt. Phil's one of the few guys I know that can literally just hunt for a living.
Yeah.
I always say he's the only guy I know that gets paid to hunt. Even though I'm in the business, I don't get paid to hunt. I still have to run a business and all that. But I can watch Phil hunt and just the stuff he says and how he does it. And so he ends up doing exactly his dream in life of what he wanted to do. He ends up keeping his family together, which obviously is the most important part. He knows where he's going. He has this sound, firm foundation of faith, and so for him it was at 28 years old. But I've seen it happen for other men, at different ages, and so it could be younger, it could be older. I mean, I've I've baptized a guy that was in his 90s one time, which was amazing, to think that. But yeah, I mean, I think to your point, you got to deal with it, and there is redemption, and that's the beautiful story of God and faith, is that there's a sacrifice made, and you can make things right. When you just honestly say, hey, here's where I was, I messed up and blew it, and for us, it's always a reminder. Duck Dynasty for me started at 40. That's how old I was. For mom and dad, they were in their 60s. Like Si was like 65 when this show started. So I think they thought their life was pretty much, that's it. We're moving on into retirement. And just think about the life lived since Duck Dynasty. You're talking about 2012. All the books and podcasts and movies now. I mean, all these things have come. So I always encourage people, like, you never know. You just never know when I think sometimes we thought, man, I made some bad moves in high school, or I didn't do the right thing, or I didn't get the right education. Now life's over, but you never know. I mean, there's hope can spring out and bowl out, and people could say, man, there's something to do, and you just never know what that could be.
I think the hard part is you watch a 2-hour movie and you see this redemption story and you're like, oh, good, that can be me. And you feel hope and optimism. And then you get to your real life and it's like, it takes a little longer than 2 hours. you know what I mean?
Well,
it's
that's
like
where it can start.
Years and years. Right.
That's where it can start. Yeah, it's funny you say that, because I remember when Duck Dynasty came out, people would come up and say, like, Willie, what's it like being an overnight success with your business?
Right.
I said, well, Dad started in 72, so it seemed like a long time. There's a lot of patience in this business. Years of just incremental growth or setbacks in the business, where it's like and I never dreamed we would sell as many duck calls as we did. And obviously having a giant TV show helps that. But yeah, sure, man, you got to stick with it. But that's where you got to find your mission and purpose, and what that is, and that satisfaction in your faith and in your family. And then the things that are real, but it can start there, and for Phil, that's where this movie is about, seeing where it started, where that life change was made, and going, hey, I got to change up some things, and he ended up just hauling off and moving from Arkansas to Louisiana. I mean, he had to get away from people. And I think people can find themselves in this story somewhere. People can find themselves maybe with my aunt, who never gave up on her brother, maybe the pastor who said, I got to get in the car and go see somebody. And, I think there's times in our life where, like, I need to go see somebody. I need to go talk to that person. You can just see their lives being a wreck, or maybe it's maybe it's just letting go of stuff and forgiving and moving on, or maybe it's us, life wasn't fair, about how our parents were acting, but you got to move on, appreciate the good and move on, and so I think there's a lot of stories in here where people can find themselves. And even though your life may not be wrecked and damaged like that, you never know, you may be around somebody that is, maybe your kids, or maybe your son or your daughter ends up, their life's in a mess, and you're like, whew, that reminds me of that story. And so maybe it can help in that matter.
Yeah. Well, I'm ashamed to admit to tell you that I've only been duck hunting once, but I really enjoyed it. I hunt quite often. In fact, quite a lot.
What do you
duck
hunt?
Hunting only once. Everything from moose to whitetail to pigs to axis deer in Hawaii. I mean, you name it. But
well, that's more my flavor.
Really
So
hasn't got to me yet.
That's more my flavor. To truth be told, yeah, I spent way more time chasing deer, and in fact, I cooked. I got one last weekend in Mississippi, that early season. So,
Oh, nice.
so I cooked. Yeah, I cooked the tenderloins last night. So that was our first of the year. Our first. My kids and my wife's always happy. This is
Yeah, man.
the time of year when I come back and clean it, cook it, and get it going. So yeah, it's that time of year. I'm really excited about that too.
Awesome. Well, good luck in the hunting season. Tell the guys real quick where to connect with you, where to find the movie. It comes out on the 28th, September 28th, and great film. I'm excited about what you guys are doing. Let the people know.
September 28th, it'll be in theaters. And I think it's really important for us to show support. You know, it's easy to gripe about kind of state of movies or TV or whatever. It's easy to complain, but, you know, we can actually go support things. And so we've seen some movies that have done really good in that space. And Hollywood takes notice and they do that. Go to theblindmovie.com, find out more about it. And yeah, a lot of people are talking about it. So it'll be out September 28th. And, it's kind of one of the movies where we're guaranteed a week, and the more people go see it, it'll stay out there. And so yeah, go check it out. May have a friend, maybe somebody, maybe it'll help them too. So it'd be easier getting them there to maybe deal with some things than it would be in another way. So
Yeah. Well, I'll sync it all up and I'll promote heavy on my end because I love the film and I love your family and what you guys are doing. It's been good to get to know you guys just a little bit, and get a glimpse into what you guys are all about. And really appreciate everything you do. Thanks for joining me today.
awesome, good to be with you.